alhamdulillah, Br.Jake is a little bit more positive person, mashallah. Ustadh Adnan, he's a little bit more skeptical person. I think it's a UK thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Our UK guys seem a little bit like rough around the edges.
It's the UK culture.
It's like your defenses are always up. I feel like you're always like, hey, you're giving me a compliment or you're giving me a side like insult. That's always, I feel like if you say something nice to a UK guy, they're always questioning, is this a real compliment or is this like a side insult? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's definitely a thing with UK brothers, I think, because you'll tell a brother, you have a nice, easy disposition. It's like, oh, what do you mean by that, brother? It's like, what do I mean? Nice, easygoing disposition. It's like, okay, yeah. It was like
trying to say I'm soft or something.
Yeah. It's like they're waiting for the punchline. It's like so.
This is the problem. The problem is Muslims, they get excited very quickly when they see a white guy speaking for Muslims or someone from the Western world, like a politician, Jeremy Corbyn. Yeah, I mean there are. Look. This is an inferiority complex 100%. Among Muslims. Muslims are still colonially, influenced. Okay.
So many of them, old people are just thrown in there. Their families don't take care of them, even though many of them have a legitimate ability to do so, and they're just left in there, not even visited by their family members or anything. My wife's from Morocco. I go to Morocco, I never even see old homes. It's like unheard of that somebody would throw their parents into one of these old homes and just sort of forgotten about.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everybody to the Life Haqq podcast. We have with us some golden brothers. We have Ustadh Adnan Rashid and we have with us Br.Jake The Muslim Metaphysician. So for golden brothers, I have some golden chocolates for you, inshallah, to welcome you to the podcast. Not only with these chocolates, but we're nestled in the Rocky Mountains. Absolutely. Here in close to Calgary, Alberta, where we're going to have the My Dear Palestine program as part of United Islam Awareness Week. And then it all culminates with another special event of United Islam Awareness Week, Canadian Dawah Conference, which we'll have you again all together with, inshallah, 3 other amazing speakers. So, barakallahu feekum, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for this program.
Jazakallah for having us. We're happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
What are your impressions so far? Your first time in the Rocky Mountains?
Yes, absolutely amazing. I have no words to describe my feelings. The first time I was exposed to the scene, coming out of Calgary, looking at the mountains, subhanallah. I was told by the brothers that this is going to be a lifetime experience. Okay, this is like once in a lifetime experience. And I was thinking, hold on a second, Canada, what do you have here? Like what I've seen so far is so flat. I mean, I drove from Regina to Saskatoon and this was flat land, and I've been to Toronto and eastern side of Canada. So when I actually looked at the mountains, Allahu Akbar. All I have to say is Allahu Akbar. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, mountains have been used as an argument for Allah's power of creation. Wal jibala awtada. Allah mentions specifically when He is presenting His case to humanity, when He's telling humanity why Allah deserves to be worshipped. One of the things Allah states is Wal jibala awtada. He is the one who pegged mountains in the ground. And when you look at these mountains around you, Rocky Mountains near Calgary, everyone watching, I really strongly recommend, take a flight into Canada. Just come and see these mountains.
Discussing it the other night, we were trying to tell you you're going to see something amazing, and you were telling me you were skeptical.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I was, yes.
Yeah, skeptical. And it's very hard.
I had to.
Yeah, he had, so alhamdulillah, Br.Jake is a little bit more positive person, mashallah. Ustadh Adnan, he's a little bit more skeptical person. I think it's a UK thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Our UK guys seem a little bit like rough around the edges.
It's the UK culture.
It's like your defenses are always up. I feel like you're always like, hey, you're giving me a compliment or you're giving me a side like insult. That's always, I feel like if you say something nice to a UK guy, they're always questioning, is this a real compliment or is this like a side insult?
Is this like a, yeah. I mean, it's not only the UK. Yeah, it's Pakistani culture mixed with UK upbringing. So this can, both put together can make you an extreme skeptic about people claiming things, people like saying things, exaggerations and things like that. So not that I didn't trust the brothers. I was thinking maybe brothers haven't seen much in the world. Well, I mean, the way they are bigging up these mountains, so I had to see.
It was legit, and it's hard to make you speechless.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely. Absolutely.
But you were quite speechless. But there's definitely a thing with UK brothers, I think, because you'll tell a brother, you have a nice, easy disposition. It's like, oh, what do you mean by that, brother? It's like, what do I mean? Nice, easy-going disposition. It's like, okay, yeah.
You're trying to say I'm soft or something?
Yeah, it's like they're waiting for the punchline. It's like, so, I don't know. Maybe it could be a speaker's corner thing or a UK thing. I don't know. Like, you always got to be on your defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Br.Jake, how do you find?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. I've seen mountains, right? Like I was mentioning before. I've been to Vermont, seen Mount Snow, but nothing compared to the mountains here, the Rockies. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah, so beautiful.
This is like our backyard, so we have camps out here. We have different programs, Islamic programs and things like that. So we're really blessed, and it has an effect, I think, on your eman, like being near, mountainous areas.
Being near nature, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nature makes you think of the great realities in life. Okay, it makes you think of where did this come from and why, who put it here. Okay, subhanAllah.
And it's amazing to know one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. What we'll see, like on the Day of Judgment, is like the mountains will be flattened. They'll be flattened out.
SubhanAllah.
So, speaking of Day of Judgment. I think a lot of people are thinking about the Day of Judgment nowadays because of what we see happening in Palestine. And we see a lot of atrocities happening in Palestine. We probably the most documented, because we see so much of it, right? Like so many video clips and so forth. Probably one of the most documented genocides in history, like massacres in history. To see it, like you're seeing building after building being destroyed, people being sniped in real time, subhanAllah. So on one side, we see absolute madness. You're reminded of the Day of Judgment. When will these people get peace? When will the oppressors, they meet their end? But on the same hand, you do see some khair that it's coming out. And one of the things that I have noticed is that it seems to have brought many Muslims individually and as organizations together, whereas otherwise they weren't really willing to work together or try to make, the olive branch or to make the connection to get together with one another. Have you found that to be the case? Is that something that you've observed as a positive byproduct of this tragedy?
I have seen that, yes, especially on media. Many Muslims have appeared on media, on mainstream media, to defend the Palestinian cause or to speak for it.
But not just media, but like working with each other, like trying to get together with each other and kind of unite their voice. Do you see that?
Yes, indeed. I've seen that with Muslim organizations around the world, and they're working together to overcome this grief caused by this absolute disaster. I mean, you're calling it, I don't have any doubts that this is one of the signs of the Day of Judgment. Okay? The magnitude of injustice that's taking place right now is too high. Okay? Those powers, those leaders who are speaking for human rights, for justice, for equality, for egalitarian values, their word is nothing now. They are a bunch of hypocrites. They look like hypocrites when they talk, when they open their mouths about justice. When they use the word justice, it means nothing so long as the Palestinians continue to be brutalized, so long as Israelis, the Zionists, continue to bomb children, shred them, literally shred them into pieces. Tons of rubble is falling upon these children. There are organizations for the rights of dogs, cats. There are animal rights organizations. They would never see, if there was a cat or a bunch of cats, let's say, being bombed and killed, and being crushed like that. Imagine someone throwing 100 cats into a mince machine and making a video of it and somehow trying to justify it. The whole world would be in an uproar. There would be an outcry, a global outcry. Here we have thousands of children being crushed by tons of concrete, by precision bombing, by one of the most sophisticated armies in the world that has one of the most sophisticated military technologies in the world, and yet people still have the audacity to somehow justify these atrocities and this genocide that's taking place. So don't open your mouths about justice and human rights so long as the Palestinians are being brutalized.
Is that why you
like
think,
that.
Jake, we're starting to come together a little bit more? Because the people who had the mic, the people who kind of had the stage, and in terms of telling the world this is what's good and what's bad, have absolutely failed humanity. And so do you think now Muslims do you think that's one of the reasons why Muslims are coming together and saying, hey, we need to put some of our differences aside and elevate our voice? What do you think?
Yeah, I think one of the big game changers is social media, right? Everybody is seeing this genocide in 4K on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, TikTok. Everybody can see it. And it's so clear to the ummah, and not just Muslims, but non-Muslims as well, many of them. But I think that has brought Muslims together, who we do have, genuine differences with. And that's not to say that those are not legitimate differences. There could be. But nevertheless, when something like this is happening, right, and everybody can see it, and people are sharing it and posting it, I think that's what really brought people together, because especially now as an ummah, we're so spread out in the world, right? And we're seemingly divided, but with the advent of social media, it can bring people together to unite, not just for the sake of unity, but uniting on Islamic principles, right? That we are supposed to defend the oppressed, defend the oppressed Muslims. And yes, we can have differences in, even in aqidah or fiqh or whatever, but at the end of the day, when something like this is happening, we have to come to the aid of the oppressed Muslims, right? And so I think that is really absolute game changer, not only for the unity of Muslims when something like this is happening, but also really to expose the injustices that the Zionists are doing, and the Western governments and their involvement as well, against the Palestinian people. Non-Muslims are waking up to those facts. They are seeing it. We're seeing public opinion changing right in front of our eyes in the US, in the UK. They've done polls that show that people, the public opinion is being swayed, and that's because they can't hide it. This is not like 1948 or whatever. They can't, it's not easy to hide now. Everything is in 4K, everything's recorded, right? So, and it's being blasted all over the internet. And so, in one way, it's really sad for us to see. We don't want to see these things, right? We wish it weren't happening, but on the other hand, the fact that it is happening, it's good that we're able to expose them now, and we're able to expose that to a larger audience. So I think that's really a big game changer.
What does it say about us that as a Muslim community, something like this tragic has to happen for us to make any type of significant effort now to try to bring some unified force or counterbalance to the world order? Does it say that, where do we look at it? Do we look at it like we were so bad and that's why we had to get such a huge shot of pain for us to move? Or do we look at it as like a blessing? This was something that it was there to revive us. How do we look at it in terms of, it's good that we're doing this, but the reason why I asked that is that Can this be sustained? This idea of Muslims raising their voice, speaking for ourselves, uniting, creating a force, is it going to be sustained, or are we just reactionary and then we're going to go back to our slumber afterwards?
Unfortunately, I have to say that this may be temporary, because Iraq war was far bigger a catastrophe than what is taking place in Gaza right now. I mean, eventually 2 to 3 million people lost their lives due to the Iraq war, and that didn't wake up the Muslims enough. I don't want to be a skeptic or a cynic, but that's the reality.
UK side's coming out again.
Yeah. But I believe Muslims should not have allowed this to happen in the first place.
Of course, yeah.
Okay? Yeah. The fact that this is happening shows that we are simply not doing something right. We have lost the plot. We need to get our act together. We need to come together. We need to have political representation on the global scale. We need to have enough power to be able to prevent this from happening again. Never again. People keep saying about the Holocaust, which was a great catastrophe, no doubt. Okay, it was a human catastrophe. Okay, and we always hear about it. Never again, never again. So why is it happening to us again and again? Why? What happened in Bosnia? Why? What happened in Iraq? Why the Rohingya case? Why the Uyghurs? Why Palestinians? Okay, Chechnya, Syria, India right now, India. Okay, why is this all happening? Because we are simply not waking up. We wake up from our slumber temporarily, we make some noise, we do hoo-ha, and then we go back to sleep. This cannot happen. We need to get our act together. We need to get people together, educated people, influentials, academics, lawyers, economic tycoons or entrepreneurs, politicians, presidents, prime ministers, generals, you name it. All of us, we need to come together and put up a stiff resistance against such oppression, not only against the Muslims, but we are to defend the oppressed no matter who they are, no matter where they are. Okay, we the Muslims have been made the police of the world by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah tells us in the Quran that you are to police the world, you are to make this world a better place. Okay, how can we make this world a better place when we are being brutalized, when we are the ones who are being oppressed for the last, let's say, 200 years? So we cannot let this happen again. Okay, never again. It should be never again. It should have been never again long time ago. Okay, let's make this particular case the last time when this happens to Muslims anywhere in the world. Why is it happening in the first place? This is my question. So again, I don't want to be cynical, but if Muslims don't learn from this particular experience in Gaza, right, then we deserve it.
Jake, temporary, or we're going to see some sustained change?
Yeah, I mean, like Adnan said, there have been other atrocities, unfortunately, that have happened with Muslims over the past couple hundred years. And we've sort of slid back into the same position that we're in. So, I have the same worry that it could only be temporary. But we have to pray that it's not, and we have to do our part. Us three sitting here, we're having this podcast, we're having the event for Palestine, right? Okay, something big happened recently over the past 6 months, and we're having the event. But does that mean we're not going to have more events for Palestine and the other injustices going on in the world next year? We have to first deal with ourselves. We have to be representatives because like it or not, we are public figures. And so we have to start with ourselves, making sure that we keep the momentum going, right? That we don't stop calling out the injustices that are happening. Why? Just because now it's all of a sudden not so popular to do so 6 months or a year later. We can't be concerned with that. It's not going to be popular in a year, maybe, to be saying the same things. We can't be worried about that. If the reality on the ground is still the same, we need to continue exposing these, atrocities and the oppression that's happening, right? And it's not only, to be fair, it's not only in Palestine. We know there are other things happening to Muslims around the world that we need to call out and we need to be more proactive in our work in doing so. And I pray that it's not temporary. And I always think about it, at least starting with myself, right? Am I going to stop advocating for the Palestinian people? I pray that I don't, right? So, it's difficult because as time goes on, other things happen, people get interested in other things, but we can't have that happen with...
We're very reactionary,
Yeah.
I feel one of the reasons why this happens, and tell me if you feel this is a fair assessment. General populace, they get upset. They are raising awareness, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Philistine, the Rohingyas. So you have a general populace that can get upset, raise awareness. But what happens, I feel that if we keep raising awareness, but we don't affect any change over time, that has a natural, almost apathetic force on you. It's like, we're raising awareness, we're talking about it, there's no change, and then it just generates this level of apathy that it doesn't really do anything, right?
Yeah.
And I think because there's a disconnect between the populace's sentiment and that of the ruling class, whether it's in Muslim countries or here in the West. So is that a fair assessment, that because we have not really made that connection between the sentiment of the populace and in like forcing some change in the ruling class, that eventually just whenever we get upset, it's upset for a while, and then it just, there are forces in place to just put the status quo back in its position, right? So it kind of goes out of whack, everyone's upset, okay, but we're gonna just keep going back, okay, everyone get back into position, right? Do you think that is a fair assessment of perhaps why we start off so strong in a lot of these issues, but then we end up going back? And if that's the case, how can we, do you think, because it is a big issue, how do we affect that change or that awareness within the ruling class? Like, they're probably aware, there's a reason why they're able to rule over nations. But how do we affect that change, put enough pressure to put a change on that? So what do you think, Ustadh? Is that a fair assessment? And if so, how can we change that so then it's like we can capitalize on what we are going through right now?
Yeah, I think it's a fair assessment, and the solution to this is to look at those positions and reasons why rulers will start to listen to the populace.
For example,
yeah,
and I'm just kind of diverting because it's you and you've just come back from Pakistan. Imran Khan seemed, you may have a different opinion, but he seemed, for me as an outsider, knowing a little bit about what's going on, he seemed like somebody that wasn't going to toe the line with U.S. foreign policy, and he seemed like he at least had a little bit more of a pan-Islamic sentiment, right?
Yes.
And then he gets ousted, right? Like we know, foreign forces in play to oust it. Yeah. And he's loved by the people. And it seemed like he was somebody, you made that connection, like a populace and somebody in that position.
Yeah.
And then he gets ousted. And like, it looks like now he's not coming back.
Yeah.
Like the way that they've structured it, you know what I mean? So, does that even make it even worse? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does that even dishearten people even more? Or are they like, hey, we almost made it. Like, okay, let's try again. It's like, maybe a few more efforts and we'll be able to jump over the ledge.
Look, it all comes back to the potential a group of people can possess to influence policy, to influence politics, to influence change on the global political scene. How do you do that? We know today media is very important, mainstream media. Okay, journalists are the mouthpieces of governments. Okay, bankers, entrepreneurs, businesses. Okay, so you can influence change through money. You can influence change through having a voice, having an opinion that matters to the masses, or having the attention of the masses. Okay, social media has changed the dynamics, no doubt, but there is still a long way to go for Muslims in particular. If Muslims want to influence change, if Muslims want to change or bring about a positive change to the current global order, then they have to think about power shifting, how can I put it, power shifting positions or power shifting qualifications. For example, Muslims need to produce more powerful people. And what does power actually mean? Without power, you're useless. You can be a mob of people. You have no power. Just like in Pakistan, you gave an example of Pakistan. Imran Khan is the most popular leader by all polls in Pakistan. But the masses don't matter because some very powerful people don't want him to be in power. So what brings those people to power is the question. What are those power making ways or methods that these people have used to come to power? We need to really study. As Muslims, we have been generally very superficial about these things. We are very good at doing things for ourselves. We are individualistic. Even when we emigrate to the Western countries, we establish businesses, we study, we educate ourselves, we do our little things here and there. Okay, but we don't have a collective voice because we are not thinking strategically.
You know, but you know what? I would comment on that. There's a reason for that, because the system is designed for you to specialize in fields. So the system here, essentially, for coming up from the education system, is really good for you to be good at one thing, and which ends up helping the whole system. But it's really difficult to actually know how the system works and then change the system. They make it purposefully, like we don't know how. It's like, okay, I want to affect this change in policy. It's actually very difficult to understand how to do that.
But it's not impossible.
You know what I mean? No, but I'm saying that's why you have like people who come here and they do well in their field. It's because it's designed. If you work hard and specialize in something, you'll do well.
Look, if like you're a dentist, Dr. Syed, right? We have, mashallah, a metaphysician with us who's a philosopher, right? I have some little qualification in history, right? We specialize in our fields and we have put time and effort into it. Once we put our head to, or put ourselves to creating those people, whereby we have people who specialize in politics or understanding the politics of a particular nation or a particular community, then we will have those leaders who can influence change. But because we are not thinking strategically for our well-being, for our interests, living in these Western countries, or even in the Muslim countries, we're not getting our, as a collective, as an ummah, okay, our collective will is not being effective enough to bring about the change we want in the world. Okay?
What do you think, Br.Jake?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of problems. I think we need a complete, and I don't mean to sound dramatic, but we need almost a complete revolution, right? We need changes in education. We need changes in media. We need changes in how we are allocating our funds and our money. This is a huge problem. I hate to say it, but the reality is a lot of Muslims are cheap. You know, they don't want to put their money in the right places. Many of them, you could chalk it up to, many of them don't know where to put their money and to put it in the right places. But we're not, I mean, we're almost 2 billion Muslims in the world, right? And we're so disunified, we're so separated from one another in all of these fields that if we joined together, right, and actually put our money in the proper places where they belong, so many problems would be solved, right? But we're not doing that. Part of the reason, like I said, is Muslims are just being cheap. And the other thing is education. They don't know where they should be putting their money. And, you know, it's related, I think, to I hate to just make this about colonialism, but I think this has had a big effect on creating all these separate, distinct nation states in the Muslim world. Everybody's separated. It's become nationalistic, right? Everybody's worried about their country and what their country is doing, rather than this sort of global understanding of the Muslim Ummah. I think that is a huge problem. Many Muslims are now living in the West, and so it's created a sort of Western mentality that many Muslims have, which is a very individualistic society. You're talking about specialization. Specialization can be a good thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing all the time. But when everybody is specializing in their own fields and they're not collaborating, and everybody is worried about the rat race of, living in the UK or in the US and Canada. Everybody's just going to work and worried about making the extra dollar, and lack of community life. It's so individualistic, It's a huge problem. I mean, I was saying this actually to my mother the other day just to illustrate something, right? I don't know how it is here in Canada, but in the US, we have these old homes, these nursing homes. So many of them, old people are just thrown in there. Their families don't take care of them, even though many of them have a legitimate ability to do so. And they're just left in there, not even visited by their family members or anything. My wife's from Morocco. I go to Morocco, I never even see old homes. It's like unheard of that somebody would throw their parents into one of these old homes and just sort of forgotten about. What I'm trying to say is that's, symptomatic of a larger problem, that here in the West, it's more individualistic. Everybody's worried about themselves. It's not even including the nuclear family to the point of taking care of your parents when they're old, right? No, I don't want my, the first minute your father coughs wrong, you throw him in the old home. You don't want him living at your house. I don't want to deal with that. That's the Western mindset in the way that they think. And that's affected, unfortunately, many Muslims. So we need to educate Muslims, right, out of this, to be quite frank, disease, this mindset that we have, and get back to Islamic values, Islamic principles, right? I know this sounds like pie in the sky, as what I'm taking,